What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Let's Ask Paul, the podcast where I answer all of your pressing electrical code questions. And of course, the secret to life as an electrician is don't hold it in. Ask your questions from people that you can trust. And that's what we created the podcast series, Let's Ask Paul, so that you can ask your questions and we can give you reliable responses that are based on over 30 plus years of electrical experience and working on code panels. And again, my opinions are my opinions. They're nobody else's but mine. I take full ownership of all of my opinions, and I always stand behind my opinions or interpretations. But if you want your questions asked and you want to get the answers, do me a favor. Go on over to paulabernathy.com, fill out the form, click the submit button, and one of your questions may be chosen for an upcoming podcast, much like today's podcast. One thing is sure, that I will respond back and give you the answers to your question the best that I can to try to give you some additional insight so that we kind of clear it up and you can go on your way with a little more knowledge of the National Electrical Code. Of course, as always, these shows are sponsored by Electrical Code Academy Incorporated. That is the company that I am the CEO and president of it, where we teach people the National Electrical Code. Now, we have the Fast Tracks program. Now, this platform covers residential, commercial, grounding and bonding, electricity 101, industrial wiring, and of course, exam preparation and NEC learning. And that is the Fast Tracks Black program. So if you want to learn the NEC at a 20,000 foot view, you want to do it for exam prep or just become more well-rounded, maybe as an electrical inspector, engineer, designer, journeyman, or master that really wants to learn the code at a 20,000 foot view, get a good understanding of calculations and all those, then you want the Fast Tracks Black program. If you're very hyper-focused on residential, then you want the Fast Tracks Red program. Okay. Now, for exam prep, you want black. The red, green, blue, yellow, although those are post-licensing products. Those are for once you already have your license, okay? It's designed to give you more in-depth knowledge to reduce the learning curve, help increase your code knowledge, very specific to that type of work you're doing. And it's just great courses to enhance your knowledge. And everybody should always be seeking to challenge themselves and gain more knowledge in this industry. That's what we're after. So check those out. They're all called the Fast Tracks. There's different levels. So check those out over on electricalcodeacademy.net. But of course, you can find it at .com or .org as well, because we usually get all of those domains. So check them out. If you have any questions, again, there's free videos, there's demos, there's if you go up to the courses, online courses, you'll see there's a link, and you can actually interact with some demos and watch some videos on the programs before you buy it, so you can get a better understanding of what it is. Okay. And of course, all of our programs are good for a full year, 24/7, 365. And of course, we have what's called the Fast Track Orange, which gives you access to 4 programs of your choice. It basically starts with the base black, red, green, and blue. But for example, if you already had the black because you're an existing Fast Track student, then you can swap out that for the grounding and bonding if you want. Or we don't care. You just got to let us know once you make your purchase. All right. Enough of that. So today's question was submitted over at the portal, over at, again, paulabernathy.com. And here's the question. So we're going to do our best to try to answer this question today. And hopefully you're enjoying these podcasts. Do me a favor. Hit that like button. Hit that share button. Hit that subscribe button. Remember, you can listen to these on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Just search for Ask Paul or Master the NEC, or you'll find us anyway. But if you want to listen to all these, just go to paulabernathy.com. You can actually listen straight from the website if you want to do that as well. All right, here's the question. It says, hey, Paul, regarding conduit fill and the requirements of derating conductors when more than 3 current carrying conductors are in a conduit, and that also would apply for tubing as well. So that's, and to be honest with you, it applies to a cable as well. It says, in this situation, is the neutral conductor included in the wire count? I enjoy your podcast and find the lengthy dialogue helpful, seeing that most answers to questions are all dependent on the situation. Thanks. Absolutely. And with that said, I'm going to tell you, for the person that submitted this, you've actually jumped a couple things in your question that are totally different So I want to kind of clarify these things. So the first thing that you say, you're talking about conduit fill. So conduit fill has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not a neutral conductor is a current carrying conductor or not. This is basically, if you got a conductor and it's in a raceway, it's going to count as fill. So you're going to do the normal raceway fill requirements that we do, Chapter 9, Table 4, Table 5 are the ones you're predominantly going to use. You gotta know Chapter 9, Table 1. You got to know that when you got over 2 conductors, then what you're going to have to do is you can't exceed 40% fill. All of that has nothing to do with whether or not the conductors are current carrying or not. Okay? All right. So also with that said, many people are familiar with Informative Annex C, as in Charlie. That tells you the number of conductors that can go in a raceway and not violate the raceway fill requirements, which in this case, if it's again over 2, then it would be as long as you're not violating the 40% fill. Remember, that is only fill. That has nothing to do with having all those conductors in there and the ampacity of the conductors. Because obviously, if you have more than 3 current carrying conductors, then you've got a condition of use where you're going to have to do what? You're going to have to make an adjustment to the ampacity. That's not what we're talking about. We're just talking raceway fill. If all the conductors are the same size, then you just go to Informative Annex C, and that just saves you the math. And you can just find the different raceways you have and look for the different size, and that's the number of conductors you can put in there. As long as you understand that that has nothing to do with the ampacity of those conductors, because there is other steps that you have to do for that. Okay, so that's what you ask first about conduit fill. Then it goes and talks about derating when you have more than 3 current carrying conductors in a conduit. Totally different thing. So I've addressed the raceway fill thing and whether or not you went on and says, does a neutral conductor included in the wire count? So see how this is getting convoluted in how you ask the question. And this is for all you out there. Really think about how you ask the question, because this is kind of going back and forth, back and forth. Whether the neutral is current carrying or not, it still counts when it comes to raceway fill. That's irrelevant. So let's take that out of the way. I think what you're asking is, when do I count a neutral as a current carrying conductor? I think that's what you're asking, because when we have to count the conductors and we determine whether or not we have more than 3 current carrying conductors, then we end up having to go to 310.15 C1, and we have to start doing what? We have to start doing some modifiers. So when is a neutral considered a current carrying conductor? All right, well, I'm going to give you some guidance here, because I'm going to tell you in your 2020 edition of the NEC, where you're going to go is to 310.15, and you're going to go to E. E is in Eric, or E is in Edward, okay? Or E is in Echo, whatever. E. Now that is different, okay, for the 2020 versus the 2017. So I'm talking 2020. So again, you'll find it right there in the same location in 310.15. But we're going to be talking about E in this lesson. So it says neutral conductor. It says neutral conductors shall be considered current carrying in accordance with any of the following. So any of these right here would be considered current carrying conductors. Now, before I even look at the list as a 1, a 2, and a 3, I want to tell you right now, if you have a raceway and it has a hot and neutral in it, both of those are current carrying conductors. If I have 4 hots and 4 neutrals, then I have 8 current carrying conductors. You with me? So the hots and neutrals of a circuit, and those are the circuit conductors, those are current carrying conductors. All right, so that's one is a given. Obviously, what goes out comes back. I mean, in reality, it doesn't work like that, but we understand that it is alternating current, so it's going out and back, out and back, out and back. Okay, for ease of understanding, we'll just go with that concept. Okay, we're not going to turn this into an electrical theory class on how current really moves in a conductor, but you get the point. It carries current. Now, if you've ever been shocked by a neutral, trust me, you know that it's carrying current. Okay, so that one's easy. That's out of the way. Now, let's look at here at E1, E2, and E3. Now, E1 is the first one, and it says, a neutral conductor that carries only the unbalanced current from other conductors of the same circuit shall not be required to be counted when applying the provisions of 310.15 C1. So if the neutral in your circuit is carrying only the unbalanced current from other conductors, part of the same circuit, like a multi-wire branch circuit, and you've got a red and a black, and you have a white that's being shared, okay, that white is only carrying the imbalanced load, okay, the imbalanced current. So in that case, you don't count that as a current carrying conductor. So if I had a raceway with a black, a red, a white, and let's say I had an equipment ground, then I've got two phase conductors, and I have one grounded neutral conductor, and I have one equipment grounding conductor. The number of current carrying conductors in that raceway would be two, right? The black and the red. The white would not if it's a multi-wire branch circuit and it's actually carrying the imbalanced current from the different legs. Makes sense, right? All right, so that's what's taking place, and then that's okay. Now, again, if I run a raceway and I have multiple phase conductors and I have a separate neutral for each phase, okay, then that's multi-branch circuits. And that's three separate circuits. If I have a black, red, blue, and a separate white with blue stripe, white with black stripe, white with red stripe, that's three separate circuits. So that's 6 current carrying conductors. Okay. That neutral is not carrying any imbalanced load. It is carrying the entire load in terms of neutral current when it's to a single black, red, or blue. But if I had one white wire and I had a black, red, blue, and it was going to a multi-wire branch circuit, then what is that white wire doing? It's carrying the imbalanced current from any of those phases of that same circuit. Then guess what? You're not going to count that as a current carrying conductor. Make sense? Okay, so let's look at number 2. Now, the next two that I'm going to be talking about are very specific to Y systems. Now, Y systems, again, you know there's a Y in Delta. Y systems are predominantly used in a lot of office buildings, applications, because you can get more 120 volt branch circuits off of a Y system because it has 3 different windings for this. Whereas in a Delta, usually it makes a connection where it connects between 2 of the phase connections, and you have a winding in the middle, and you tap the middle of it to break that 240 volt winding, and that way you get 2 legs that are 120. You can only put a limited amount of 120 circuits on that, whereas the other ones would be mainly like motors, 240, and all those type of things. So Ys in a 120, say 120 208 Y system is in office buildings where you need a whole bunch of 120 volt loads, then a Y is a better option for you. Okay, now I'm not here to tell you how the engineer needs to design their system. It's irrelevant. I'm just telling you why people tend to use Y systems a lot, because they have a lot of branch circuits that use 120 volts, let's say. So anyway, so when we're looking at item number 2, it says, okay, so when we're looking at item number 2, this says in a 3-wire circuit consisting of 2 phase conductors and a neutral conductor that is actually derived from a 4-wire 3-phase system that is a Y-connected system, it says a common conductor carries approximately the same current as the line to neutral load currents of the other conductors, okay, those other 2 conductors, and shall be counted when applying the provisions of 310.15c1. So if you have a 3-phase 4-wire system and you're taking a 3-wire circuit off of that, then you have to remember that that neutral has to be counted as a current carrying conductor, right? Because it's going to carry approximately the same amount of current as the ungrounded conductors. And also, one of the other things that are important to remember in that same scenario, when you're doing a load calculation or you're sizing conductors, if you go look at 220.61b, you'll notice that in that condition, I think it's 220.61b, let me go look. In that condition, you could not derate that neutral size, okay? That's just an example when you're calculating the size of the neutral conductor. Is that one of those examples? So let me go look real quick, and I'll give you specifically where it is. Let's see here. Prohibited reductions is actually 220.61c. So I was close. And you notice that it says, item number C1, it says, any portion of a 3-wire circuit consisting of 2 ungrounded conductors and the neutral conductor of a 4-wire 3-phase system, that is one of the ones under C, which does not allow you to reduce the size of the neutral conductor. Why? Because it's carrying about the same current as the other conductors of that 3-wire system that is being derived from a 4-wire 3-phase system. Okay, so again, see how they go together? You cannot reduce that neutral because it is current carrying. It's got to be sized to handle that current, and it would be traditionally the same size as your ungrounded hot conductors that you're deriving from the system. So it's funny how that all works together, right? Everything just kind of works together, and that's just the beautiful thing of the code, that code panels do work as close together as they can to try to nail these things down, but that one just hits it right on the head. We know that conductor is going to carry about the same amount of current as the hot conductors if it is one of the 3-wire circuits that are being derived from a 4-wire 3-phase system. So there you go. Then that's when you would count that one as a current carrying conductor, obviously. And then the last one, item number 3, is another 4-wire 3-phase system. And again, another Y system. But this one has to do when you have a major portion of loads that consist of non-linear loads. So we're talking about, you have a building that's loaded with fluorescent lighting, electronic ballast switching. You have a bunch of variable frequency drives. You have a bunch of adjustable speed drives. You have a lot of computers, things like that, servers. All of those things just chop the waveform up. That is not considered a linear load. That's a non-linear load. Okay, the waveform gets chopped up. So that means the neutral doesn't cancel out current and carry the imbalance. In fact, depending on it, it's basically could carry as much or even more than the actual ungrounded conductors, the HOTs. So in this case, it's saying, look, if a major portion of the loads in this building are consisting of nonlinear loads, then the creation of something called harmonic distortion or harmonic currents are going to be present on that neutral conductor. And because they're present on that neutral conductor, you're going to have to count that neutral as a current carrying conductor. So in this case, it behooves you to understand the system that you're running these circuits, okay? Because if that building in that application, if you're wondering whether or not these conductors are going to be considered current carrying conductors or not in these raceways, it depends on the equipment you're running it to. And it depends on whether or not, again, the major portion of the load that you're running these circuits to, if the major portion of the load consists of nonlinear loads, then you're going to have to treat those conductors as current carrying conductors, most certainly when it comes to making the count of how many current carrying conductors you have. So in the event that you have more than 3 current carrying conductors and any of these conditions exist, then you're going to have to absolutely add that to the count of current carrying conductors. And then ultimately what that's going to end up doing, as you know, it's going to probably affect the amount of ampacity that you have on a conductor, because you're going to have to kick in 31015C1. That is dealing with the current carrying conductors. Now, one last thing I'll throw into this, because we're talking about the current carrying conductors, is you'll notice that there's a little statement that is underneath table 31015C1. So this one is, if you're running some spares, if these spares are being run in these raceways or in these cables and you're thinking, I'm not going to use them, so I don't have to count them. If these spares are being run for future ungrounded conductors, they most certainly would be current carrying. And so what? You have to take them into account at the time of installation. You can't say they're just a spare. I'll just tuck them away. I'm not going to count them right now. You have to account for that. Okay? Make it clear. All right? So hopefully that answered that question for you and how you do it. There was a lot of stuff in that question and it kind of just, jumped a little bit around, but hopefully that answered that question for how do you determine if a grounded neutral conductor is a current carrying conductor. So hopefully I laid that out for you and made it simple for you to understand. All right, folks. Well, that's going to be it for today's episode. We're going to keep it short today for this episode of Ask Paul. Remember, you can submit your questions to me over at paulabernathy.com. I'm more than happy to try to answer your questions and get you the information you need. Share it with your friends. Let everybody know about this feature. Again, I don't know anybody else that does anything like this. And again, the answers that you get are well-founded, and I do my best to try to make sure that I explain them the best I can. Remember, if I don't explain it to your satisfaction, you can always let you know what episode this is. Go back to paulabernathy.com, give us a reply, say an episode number, whatever this is. I think this one is, 47. And say, Paul, I need a little more information, or I'm responding to your podcast on episode whatever, and you can ask your question and we'll build on top of that and even answer that question. So I'm here to answer the questions. So until next time, folks, stay safe. God bless. And if you're looking for exam preparation or you want to learn the NEC much better, do me a favor. Go over to our website. We have really put a lot of time into making sure that our courses can benefit you and you're not just paying money that's wasted money. I am very dedicated to making sure that you learn something when you're in our programs. Okay? Till next time, folks, stay safe. God bless.